Welcome to the left seat. As your flight instructor for today's explainer, I am absolutely thrilled to get you prepped and ready for what is, honestly, one of the most fascinating ground reference maneuvers in your aviation training. We are going to be tackling 8s on pylons. Now look, if you've been out there practicing your turns around a point, you might be sitting there thinking you know exactly what to expect. But I promise you, this maneuver, it's going to completely change the way you think about energy management, the wind, and the whole relationship between your airplane and the ground. So grab your headset and let's get you ready for the skies.
Right, so first things first, let's define exactly what it is we are trying to achieve here. 8s on pylons is essentially flying an approximate figure-8 pattern around two specific ground reference points. We call those points pylons. But here is the major twist, and it's a big one. Unlike your other maneuvers where you're desperately trying to draw a perfect circle or a flawless figure-8 over the ground, your actual ground track here doesn't really matter. Your one and only goal is to keep your wingtip continuously pinned, literally pivoting directly on that pylon. And to pull that off, your altitude, your airspeed, and your bank angle are all going to have to constantly vary. It's a real juggling act.
Okay, here is the game plan for our pre-flight briefing today. First, we'll cover the 8s on pylons objective. Then, finding your pivotal altitude. Third, entering the maneuver. Fourth, adjusting for the wind. And finally, fixing your mistakes.
Let's dive right into Section 1, the 8s on pylons objective. Now, depending on what kind of airplane you're flying, your sight picture is going to change just a little bit. If you're up there in a high-wing aircraft, that pylon is going to sit just underneath the wingtip, right about where the strut meets the wing. But if you're flying a low-wing airplane, the pylon is going to look like it's resting right on top of the wingtip. The concept is super simple, though. Just imagine a laser beam shooting straight out of your wingtip directly to that pylon on the ground. Your job as the pilot is to make absolutely sure that laser beam never, ever moves off the target as you orbit around it.
Well, to keep that imaginary laser beam locked on, we actually have to throw out some of the golden rules you've learned earlier in your training. Up until now, right, instructors like me have been drilling into your head, maintain constant altitude, maintain constant airspeed. Yeah, not anymore. This is a highly dynamic, three-dimensional maneuver. Because you're orbiting a fixed point, the closer you get to the pylon, the steeper your bank angle has to be. And the further away you drift, the shallower the bank. Add the wind into that mix, and suddenly your airspeed is varying, and your altitude is fluctuating throughout the entire pattern. You're basically managing a giant 3D puzzle in the sky, where the ultimate singular goal is just keeping that wingtip pinned.
Moving on to Section 2, finding your pivotal altitude.
Okay, the physics behind this maneuver are just fascinating. Think about it. The radius of any turn depends on both your bank angle and your speed. If you fly faster, your turn naturally gets wider. And if your turn gets wider, that pylon is going to drift behind your wingtip. So what's the only mathematical way to fix this and keep the wingtip pinned at a higher speed? You have to fly at a higher altitude. This specific, magical vertical distance above the ground is called your pivotal altitude. And every single speed has its own exact pivotal altitude. Faster means fly higher. Slower means fly lower. Believe it or not, it doesn't depend on your bank angle at all. It depends entirely and completely on your ground speed.
Let's put some real numbers to this so you can see what I mean. This cheat sheet right here comes directly from the mathematical formula for pivotal altitude. Look at how dramatic this shift actually is. Say your ground speed is a leisurely 80 knots. Your pivotal altitude is just 570 feet above ground level, or AGL. But let's say a really strong tailwind kicks up and pushes your ground speed to 120 knots. You suddenly have to climb all the way to 1,280 feet AGL just to keep that wingtip pivoting properly. I mean, that difference is massive. You absolutely have to anticipate this stuff before you even begin the maneuver.
So the crucial question becomes, how do you translate this math into what you're actually seeing on your instruments in the cockpit? The formula gives you your altitude above ground level, right? AGL. But your altimeter reads mean sea level, MSL. So here's the trick. You must take your calculated AGL pivotal altitude and add it to the ground elevation of the pylons you picked out. For example, if your math says you need to be at 890 feet AGL and the ground elevation out the window is 1,200 feet MSL, you just add those together. You'll be flying along looking for exactly 2,090 feet on your altimeter. Don't skip this. It's a totally vital safety and operational step.
All right, Section 3, entering the maneuver. Let's get hands-on.
Any great maneuver always starts with a really solid entry. Step 1, you want to fly diagonally crosswind directly over the midpoint between your two chosen pylons. You want to enter right at or maybe even slightly above that calculated pivotal altitude for your expected ground speed. Step 2, be patient.
Wait until your wingtip is perfectly abeam, or honestly, even just a tiny bit past that first pylon. Then, step 3, smoothly use your ailerons to roll into a 30 to 40 degree bank to lock onto the target. And hey, make sure you keep it coordinated with the rudder. Note that the recommended maximum bank angle at the absolute steepest point of this maneuver is 40 degrees. So if you're banking steeper than that, your pylons are way too close together.
You know, as flight instructors, we love our simple little mantras, and this is the one you really need to memorize for the entry. It goes like this: bank and put the wingtip on the pylon. Really, don't overthink it at first. Just smoothly roll the airplane and pin that target.
Moving right along to Section 4, adjusting for the wind. Because let's face it, there's always wind.
I want you to really think critically about this for a second. We established just a minute ago that ground speed dictates your pivotal altitude, right? So what exactly happens when you're flying a 360-degree circle in a 20-knot wind? Your airspeed indicator might be pegged at a constant 100 knots, sure, but your ground speed? That is going to violently swing between 120 knots on the downwind side and a sluggish 80 knots on the upwind side. Because your ground speed is constantly changing due to that wind, your pivotal altitude has to constantly change right along with it. When you're making your turn on the downwind side, the wind is aggressively pushing you, creating a really high ground speed. The physics require a high pivotal altitude, so you literally must climb. As you continue that turn and face directly into the wind, the upwind side, your ground speed drops significantly. To keep the wingtip pinned then, your pivotal altitude lowers, meaning you must descend. When you put it all together, you are essentially flying a slanted orbit.
Let's really cement this comparison into your mind, because it's the core of the maneuver. On the downwind turn, high ground speed means a high pivotal altitude, so your immediate action is to climb. Conversely, on the upwind turn, low ground speed means a low pivotal altitude, so your action is to descend. This right here is exactly why we always recommend entering the maneuver downwind. It is so much easier to start high and gracefully descend as your ground speed drops, picking up a little airspeed along the way, than it is to start low, get slow, and then struggle to climb.
Finally, Section 5, fixing your mistakes. Because let's be real, you're going to make a few.
Here's the beauty of this maneuver. When you look out the window, that pylon is going to tell you exactly what you are doing wrong. If you nailed your mouth perfectly, the pylon will stay locked right there on the wingtip. But if you are too high for your current ground speed, you'll naturally tend to turn inside the pylon. From your seat in the cockpit, it will literally look like the pylon is moving forward, running away from your wingtip. Conversely, if you are too low for your ground speed, your turn is going to swing out wide. The pylon will appear to slip backward, trailing behind the wing.
Now, whatever you do not try to chase the pylon with your rudder. Trust me on this. That will just throw your airplane completely out of coordinated flight, and we don't want that. You fix these visual errors exclusively with your elevator. If the pylon moves forward, apply forward pressure on the yoke to descend. If the pylon moves backward, apply back pressure on the yoke to climb to a higher altitude.
So here is your second, absolutely golden instructor mantra for the day: follow the pylon with the control column. It is an incredibly intuitive stick and rudder reaction once you get the hang of it, I promise. If the visual target goes forward, you just push the stick forward. If the visual target slips backward, you just pull the stick backward. You aren't doing anything crazy. You are literally just steering the wingtip right back onto the target using your pitch. As we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with a really important question to ponder before your next actual flight. Now that you've seen the raw physics of how ground speed directly dictates the altitude required to hold a pivot point, how is that going to change the way you view energy management, wind correction, and spatial awareness in literally all of your future flying? Because honestly, On Pylons isn't just a maneuver. It's a total masterclass in understanding how an airplane moves through a fluid sky. Keep that wingtip pinned, study hard, and I will see you out on the flight line.